Chapter 3174. Looking at the place in front of him, dark clouds swirled in his eyes. His face was as dark as water. He looked around and noticed the traces of the blood array on the ground. His heart trembled slightly, and he turned to leave. Not long after he left, many people came to the place. They stared at the huge pit and clicked their tongues in wonder. They studied it for a long time, but they still couldn't figure out what had happened. Back in Feng Manor, Lang Hua and the others quickly gathered around him. "My lord, have you seen our master?" Lang Hua asked. Lang Hua, Hui Lang, and Ying Yi were also there. Even Qin Xan, who had taken care of Hao in the courtyard, came to the front yard with the child. "I didn't see anyone, but there are traces of the blood array on the ground. There are also remnants of a black aura in the surroundings. It seems to be the demon's people." As Xianyuan spoke, he had a pensive look on his face. In his heart, he was guessing where the blood array would take her to. "Will master be okay?" Qin Xan couldn't help but ask. "Yes, master." "Will the ghost doctor be okay?" No. With the ghost doctor's strength and ability, how could anything happen to her? "She will definitely be safe and sound," Grey Wolf hurriedly said. Xianyuan sat on the main seat. He glanced at them and ordered in a deep voice, "I'm going to cultivate in seclusion and try to break through to the divine realm as soon as possible. Now that Fengzhou hasn't returned, you can take care of everything in the manor." "Yes." Everyone replied and stood up straight. Hui Lang, Ying Yi. Xianyuan's gaze fell on the two of them. "Master." The two of them stepped forward and looked at him. "You two go and find out about the demons and the Black Lotus Master. I want to know everything after I come out of seclusion." Hearing this, the two of them immediately replied, "Yes." "Don't worry, master." Xianyuan stood up and said to Ling Shuang and the others, "Take good care of Hao." Then, he went to the back of the mountain. Inside the Feng Manor, Elder Mei, Ling Hua, and the others were guarding it. Fire Phoenix continued to guard the cave in the back mountain. As for Xianyuan, he had entered seclusion. Because he was worried about Fengzhou, he needed to break through in the shortest amount of time possible. On the other side, early morning. Fengzhou, whose robe had been cut by the wind blade, treated and bandaged the wounds of Du Fan and the others who were lying on the ground. Then, he leaned against the side and rested, his eyes paying attention to the movements around him. At that time, when the blood array was activated, she was only able to save the few of them in time, but because of that, she was sent to this unknown valley. Fortunately, although Du Fan and the others were heavily injured, they managed to preserve their lives. As time passed, Guemo woke up first. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw his master sitting by the side leaning against a tree. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Master, why are you here?" Fengzhou glanced at him and said, "If I wasn't here, you guys would probably have gone to see the King of Hell." At this time, Guemo finally regained his senses. After seeing the wounds on his body, his expression changed. "We were ambushed. We don't know what happened after that." Fengzhou threw a water bag filled with spirit spring water to him and said, "Drink some. You guys are all heavily injured. When they wake up, I will tell you all the details." Guemo caught the water bag that Fengzhou threw over and opened it to drink a mouthful, quenching his thirst. He went forward and shook the others, waking them up one by one. When Du Fan and the others were shaken awake by Guemo, the moment they opened their eyes, they saw Fengzhou in front of them. They were all shocked. Chapter 3175. Seeing that they had awakened one by one, Fengzhou briefly explained the situation to them. Finally, she said, "So, this is what you see now. As for where this place is, it seems to be a valley. As she spoke, she took out a few fruits from her space and threw them to them. Fill your stomachs. The few of them took the fruits and ate them. As the spiritual fruits entered their stomachs, a warm current surged into their bodies and soothed their internal injuries. They looked at their bandaged wounds and asked, "Master, should we go and find a way out first? You are all injured. Since you're awake, you should rest here first. I'll come back after I explore the path." As she spoke, she summoned Tunyun from her space and had it guard them here. She left first to explore the surroundings and get a feel of the terrain. She flew forward on her sword. After flying for a while, she stood on a high place and saw the scene that came into her eyes. She could not help but be slightly surprised. She saw that after crossing a mountain, there were various kinds of spiritual herbs planted on the small hillside that connected to the valley. There were even medicine boys busily working in the medicinal fields. If the place they were at before was a valley, it could only be considered a hole compared to the medicinal valley in front of them. Just as she was about to go forward, she lightly touched the boundary that protected the entire valley. Almost at that moment, a sharp shout was heard. "Who goes there?" As soon as the shout was heard, two figures instantly appeared in mid-air within the boundary, less than 10 meters away from her. She sized up the two people and could not help but be shocked. Even with her cultivation as an enlightened master, she could not tell the strength of these two people. Then, she looked at their auras. They were calm and reserved, and their eyes were like torches. They were clearly extraordinary. "Where did you come from? How dare you trespass into Dan Wang Valley?" One of the middle-aged men shouted sharply. Even though they were separated by the boundary, she could feel the coercion shooting out from inside and attacking her. If she did not have the coercion of the ancient divine beast in her body, she was afraid that she would not be able to withstand the powerful coercion of the other party. "My name is Fingzhou. I didn't mean to intrude. I just lost my way here and accidentally stumbled into this place. I didn't want to alarm the two of you, so please forgive me." She cupped her hands and spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner. Perhaps it was because her attitude was better, but the two men's dark faces eased a little. They sized up the beautiful woman in red in front of them, and their eyes flashed. They slowly asked, "Our Dan Wang Valley is isolated from the rest of the world, and the surrounding thousands of miles are all dangerous places. How did a woman like you come here?" "It's a long story, but I did come here by accident." As she spoke, she looked at the two of them with her clear eyes and said, "I don't intend to enter Dan Wang Valley either. I just want to ask how to get out of this area." Hearing this, one of the middle-aged men shouted coldly, "Do you think our Dan Wang Valley is a place where you can come and go as you please?" Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Do you mean that you want me to stay here?" Chapter 3176. Isn't it because the surrounding 10,000 li is filled with danger? Is that why no one has come here? Is that why they don't know about the existence of the Pill King Valley? The corners of her mouth curled into a smile as she looked at the two men without fear or panic. Hee, that's only one of the reasons." The middle-aged man chuckled as he stroked his beard and looked at Fengjiu. "Then what's the second reason?" Fengjiu asked respectfully. "The second reason is that there are people like you who accidentally came here and have already become fertilizer, or have become a member of our Dan Wang Valley. Becoming a member of our Dan Wang Valley means that you have to forget your past memories and only serve Dan Wang Valley. Staying here, you will never be able to leave again." Hearing that, Fengjiu nodded. She looked at the busy medicine boys in the valley. She saw that most of them were young, but there were also a few who were older. They did not pay much attention to what was happening here, as if they were already used to it. They only focused on doing their own things. Just as she was pondering, one of the two people inside the barrier suddenly rushed out and reached out to grab her. Her clear eyes flashed and she quickly retreated to avoid the two people's hands. At the same time, she asked with a smile, "What do you want to do?" Your appearance and bearing are both outstanding and can be called peerless. It's a pity to become fertilizer. Why don't we capture you and feed you the water of oblivion and leave you in Danwang Valley? As the middle-aged man spoke, his eyes flashed as he stared at Fengzhou. Danwang recently said that he's lacking someone to serve him. If we send you to him, he will definitely be rewarded greatly. Hearing that, Fengzhou's smile deepened, but her clear eyes were cold and a cold light faintly flashed. She looked at the two people rushing over and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, why don't you two take me to see Danwang before making a decision? You should know that a beauty without a true temperament is lacking in wildness. Danwang might not like her. Besides, the two of you are powerful. I'm just a little girl. I can't escape from the palms of the two of you, right? At least you know your place." The two people stared at her for a while before saying, "Fine. Since you know what's good for you, we'll let you go on your own." As they spoke, they waved their sleeves and opened a hole in the barrier behind them. "Please." The two people looked at Fengzhou and gestured for her to go on her own. Seeing this, Fengzhou smiled faintly. Her figure flashed as she headed inside. Seeing this scene, the two of them looked at each other, then walked inside. After entering, the barrier behind them also sealed up. Fengzhou, who had descended from the sky, walked slowly on the small mountain path paved with stones. The two people followed behind her, as if to prevent her from escaping. However, when they saw that she was not frightened at all, as if she was taking a stroll in her own backyard, the two people could not help but feel strange. They had been here for so many years, but they had never seen anyone so calm. Compared to the people before, they could not help but feel that this woman was really a weirdo. "You accompany her. I'll go report," one of the middle-aged men said. His figure flashed and he rushed forward. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared at the end of the mountain path. Fengzhou looked around and asked, "How many people are there in Danwang Valley?" Chapter 3177. His voice paused, then he continued, "There are 99 cultivators guarding Danwang Valley." Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes flashed slightly. She looked at him and asked, "The level of your alchemists here shouldn't be low, right? For Danwang to be called Danwang, could it be that he has already reached the highest level of alchemists, the pill deity?" I didn't expect you to have some knowledge." "That's right, Danwang is already an alchemist at the pill deity level. The pills he refines are unparalleled in the world. Just one pill can increase our strength, and just one pill can give people an endless lifespan. To be able to follow Danwang is our fortune. If you can enter Danwang's eyes and become his woman, Danwang will naturally not treat you unfairly." Hearing this, Fengzhou smiled and only said, "I haven't seen an alchemist at the pill deity level. I really have to take this opportunity to see it." Thus, along the way, she chatted with the middle-aged man. Perhaps the middle-aged man felt that she couldn't leave this place, so he didn't hold back from her. Instead, he told her everything she asked, and she learned a lot about this place. When she passed by a cave, she smelled a strong medicinal fragrance. She couldn't help but stop and look at the cave, asking, "Is there an alchemist refining pills?" "That's right, every alchemist in our Danwang Valley is the best." His expression was proud. "Most of the pills they refine are for us to consume to increase our strength. In here, the alchemist's status is extraordinary." Fengzhou nodded and asked again, "Which alchemist refined the oblivion water? Can you really forget everything in the world after drinking it?" "The oblivion water was refined by Danwang, and only Danwang can refine it." "Looks like Danwang is really good," Fengzhou said. "Of course, he's Danwang." As the middle-aged man spoke, he sized up Fengzhou and asked, "You know about medicinal pills?" Fengzhou shook his head and said seriously, "I don't understand." "It looks like you don't understand either. The Tao of alchemy is broad and profound. How could a little girl like you understand it?" The middle-aged man glanced at Fingzhou with an "I knew it" look on his face. He led her all the way to the front and said, "We're about to reach Dan Wang's cave. Let's wait here first." As he spoke, he brought Fingzhou to a stone table under a tree at the side of the mountain path and sat down. Fingzhou obeyed and sat down. He looked around and said, "Are all the people living here immortals' caves? 1 cave residence per person." And, that's right. 1 cave residence per person. It's also convenient to refine pills and make medicine. The middle-aged man nodded and said. Perhaps because he saw that Fingzhou had been well behaved along the way, he called for someone to bring tea over. "Have a cup of tea. This is the spirit tea that our Dan Wang Valley grew ourselves. You can't buy it even if you have money." He gestured for her to try the tea. Fingzhou smiled slightly and thought it was funny. Did this person think that she had to stay? Did he think that she would never be able to escape once she entered this place? Then should we hand over all the pills refined by the alchemists in the valley? Chapter 3178. So that's how it is. As Fingzhou spoke, she looked to the front and saw the middle-aged man who had left earlier walk over. She picked up the teacup and took a sip. Sure enough, the tea was fragrant and sweet as it entered her throat. There was even a faint aura of spiritual power condensing in her body. "How is it? Does Dan Wang want to see her?" The middle-aged man sitting next to Fingzhou asked as he looked at the person who had come. The middle-aged man glanced at Fingzhou and said to the person, "Dan Wang just happens to be in seclusion to refine pills. He can't be disturbed. Didn't I hear that Dan Wang had just refined a new pill not long ago? Why is he in seclusion to refine pills again?" The middle-aged man was astonished. He didn't expect to run into Dan Wang in seclusion. He said that he went into seclusion early this morning. It will probably take at least a few days before he comes out. Let's settle her down first. The middle-aged man said as he stared at Fingzhou. She must drink the oblivion water first. Hearing this, Fingzhou's eyes flashed slightly. She asked, "What does the oblivion water look like? Will there be any adverse effects on the body after drinking it? Is it only after I drink the oblivion water that you can completely relax?" "That's right. Only when you drink the oblivion water and forget everything in the past, like a blank piece of paper, can we treat you as one of us," the middle-aged man said as he stared at her. "You don't have to worry. It will only make your memories disappear. It won't have any other effects on you." As he spoke, the middle-aged man took out a small transparent bottle and handed it to Fingzhou. "Drink it." Fingzhou took it and looked at the medicine inside the transparent bottle. It was a sky-blue medicine, and there seemed to be light flowing through it. She held the small bottle and looked at the 2 middle-aged men. She smiled and said, "Then after I drink this medicine, will I forget the 2 of you as well?" "That's right." The 2 men nodded. Hearing this, Fingzhou flicked her sleeve, and a wine pot and 3 wine cups appeared on the table. She held the wine pot and poured the 3 cups. "I, Fingzhou, and the 2 of you know each other. Since you want to forget the past, I invite the 2 of you to have a drink with me." As she spoke, she raised the wine cup and looked at the 2 men. "Hee, you didn't put drugs in the wine, did you?" one of the middle-aged men said as he stood still. Fingzhou laughed. "Fingzhou. If that's the case, wouldn't I? With the strength and cultivation of the 2 of you, not all kinds of medicine will be useful to you." When the 2 heard this, they looked at each other and nodded. "You're right, with our cultivation, ordinary medicines are useless to us. What's more, we're in Pill King's Valley, we don't think you'd dare to play any tricks." As they spoke, the 2 men sat down and took a sniff of the wine cup. The strong fragrance of the wine assailed their noses, and there was a strong and pure aura of spiritual power. The 2 men couldn't help but take a deep breath. "I know this is good wine even before I drink it." The two men praised and slowly tasted the wine. After drinking the wine, they felt that the wine was more fragrant and delicious, so they poured another cup at the same time. Fengjiu smiled when she saw this. She also picked up her glass and took a sip of wine. She watched the two of them drink 3 glasses of wine in a row. When she was about to pour another glass, her outstretched hand drooped down weakly. Her whole body also fell down and she fell asleep. It seemed that she was very drunk. Chapter 3179. Just as she was about to stand up, a voice suddenly sounded. Is the immortal drunken wine tasty? She was startled and instinctively raised her head to look in the direction of the voice. She actually saw a gray-robed old man sitting on a tree. The old man's body was dirty and messy, as if he had not bathed for a long time. His hair and beard were already shining with a silver light, but his face was rosy and there was not a single wrinkle. At this moment, he was looking at her with a smiling gaze, which made her somewhat confused for a moment. When did this old man get here? She actually did not notice. He even asked if the immortal drunken wine tasted good. Did he see everything that happened just now? For a moment, her eyes flashed as she calculated in her heart. Seeing that she did not speak, the old man jumped down from the tree and sat by the table. He pointed at the wine in front of Fengjiu. Give this old man a cup too. Fengjiu looked at him and said, This is something that will make you drunk. Are you sure you want to drink it? I'll try it. The old man said with a smile, I haven't drunk in a long time. I'm a little craving. Seeing this, Fengjiu poured a cup for him. After seeing him raise the cup and take a sip, he frowned with a look of disdain. This is as light as water. Can it be considered the immortal drunken wine? It doesn't taste good, it doesn't taste good. As he spoke, he poured the wine behind him and put the cup on the table. He looked at Fengjiu with a smile. How about I take you to drink the real immortal drunken wine? Before Fengjiu could say anything, she was pulled away by the old man, not allowing her to resist or refuse. Looking at the old man, Fengjiu's eyes narrowed. Who exactly was this person? Up close, this person had a strong medicinal fragrance on him. He should be someone who dealt with medicinal pills all year round. But when she was on the tree, she did not smell any medicinal fragrance at all. Senior, are you an alchemist? Fengjiu asked as she followed him. The old man in front looked back at her and said with a smile, Yes. This old man is an alchemist. As they walked, they passed through the small forest and the cave. When they arrived at a stream, the old man let go of Fengjiu's hand and stared at the stream in front of him. Finally, he said to Fengjiu, Wait for me here. His figure flashed past, and his feet stepped on the rocks as he leaped out. He came to the side of a big tree at the bottom of the stream and began to dig. Not long after, he dug out a jar of wine from the soil in the stream. Ha 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 ha, it's still here. He smiled so excitedly that his eyes narrowed. He walked quickly to Fengjiu's side and said, Let's go. This old man will let you have a taste of the true drunken immortal. As he spoke, he carried the jar of wine to the other side of the forest. He sat down under a tree and was about to open the jar to drink when Fengjiu said, Wait. The old man looked at her and asked, What's wrong? Isn't it a pity to have wine without food? When I came here earlier, I saw a group of spirit chickens in the forest. How about I catch 2 and roast them? She looked at the old man with sparkling eyes. Spirit chickens. The old man was stunned for a moment, and his expression was strange. You mean the phoenix tail spirit chicken? Yes. Fengjiu nodded and said, I'm good at roasting chicken. It'll definitely taste great with wine. Hearing this, the old man's eyes lit up. All right. Then you go. I'll wait for you here. The old man said, looking at her. Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded and turned to leave. Chapter 3180. Fengjiu walked back to where she came from. Because of the old man's unfathomable strength, she wanted to take this opportunity to leave. However, thinking of the old man's expression and casual tone, she became uncertain. Although he did not know who this person was, but one thing was for sure, and that was, this old man was the alchemist inside. However, this alchemist clearly saw everything, but did not mention anything, did not say anything, and instead pulled her to drink. This made her a little confused. What did he want to do? After catching 2 phoenix-tailed spiritual chickens, she went back. It was not that she didn't want to leave, but she felt that the old man wouldn't let her go so easily. Maybe when she slipped away, the old man would follow her. With his unfathomable strength, even if he followed her, she wouldn't be able to find him. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but sigh. The cultivators she had seen outside for a long time were not much stronger than her, but she didn't expect that when she came here, she would meet several people who were stronger than her. After returning with 2 phoenix-tailed spiritual chickens, she saw the old man sitting under a tree with a wine jar in his arms, resting with his eyes narrowed. She went forward and called, "Senior, I caught the phoenix-tailed spiritual chicken." The old man opened his eyes and looked at Fengzhou, smiling. "Then you deal with it." Seeing this, Fengzhou collected the blood of the phoenix-tailed spiritual chicken and the longest tail of the 2 spiritual chickens. Instead of using branches to make a fire, she directly cleaned the chicken's feathers and internal organs, wrapped them in mud, and made a beggar's chicken. She directly baked it with the flame in her hand. The old man sat beside her and watched, his eyes flashing. She didn't know what he was thinking. As time passed, she dug out the 2 beggars' chickens and cracked them open. When the rich fragrance filled the air, the old man's eyes lit up. "It smells so good. Senior, try it." Fengzhou handed him one of the chickens. The old man didn't refuse. He took out a pair of chopsticks from his sleeve and ate the chicken. Then he praised, "You're really good." As he spoke, he poured a glass of wine and drank it. Then, he poured another glass for Fengzhou. "Come, try this drunken immortal." Hearing this, Fengzhou paused for a moment. "If this is the drunken immortal, I'm afraid I'll be drunk with just 1 cup. How can I drink with Senior?" "Hee, that's true," the old man said with a smile. With a flip of his hand, he took out a pill. "Come, eat this pill. I guarantee that you won't get drunk." When he saw the pill, Fengzhou's heart skipped a beat. It was actually a Tier 7 pill. This old man actually took out a Tier 7 medicinal pill right off the bat. Truly remarkable. Suppressing the shock in her heart, she took the pill and looked at it, saying, "Senior, a 7th level pill is extremely precious. You're giving it to me just like that? Precious? Ha ha ha, no matter how precious a pill is, it still has to be consumed by someone to have room to display its effects. Otherwise, no matter how precious it is, it would be useless." The old man said with a smile, drinking the immortal drunken wine and eating the beggar's chicken. His ruddy face was full of satisfaction. Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes flashed slightly, and his heart was slightly shaken. No matter how precious a pill was, it still had to be consumed by someone to display its magical effects. No matter how precious a pill was, it still had to be consumed by someone to be considered a precious pill. Very few people had such a state of mind and attitude. Chapter 3181. It really is the drunken immortal. She looked at the old man with surprise and asked, "Senior, this place is cut off from the rest of the world, how could there be the drunken immortal?" Also, the old man in front of her was drinking cup after cup, yet he didn't seem drunk at all. Could it be that he also ate the drunken pill in advance? The old man narrowed his eyes as he tasted the wine. He leaned against the tree and looked at her with a relaxed expression as he said, "This drunken immortal was brewed by this old man. It's just that I haven't drunk wine in a long time and haven't brewed any more. I hid the last jar here before and only dug it out today to drink it." Then the drunken immortal outside. Naturally there are people who imitate it, but it's only 30% similar. Only you guys think it's the drunken immortal. The old man lightly snorted as he drank the wine in his cup. Seeing Fengjiu staring at him, he began to laugh. Little girl, could it be that you're interested in it? Fengjiu looked at him and said, my grandfather likes to drink wine and I also know how to brew some. However, I can't brew the drunken immortal. That's easy. Take me as your master and I'll teach you. His eyes lit up as he looked at her with a face full of expectation. Just now, I saw the way you roasted the chicken. That flame was not an ordinary flame. Since you have a heavenly flame, it's best if you become an alchemist. You have to know that the pills refined by a heavenly flame alchemist are not something that a normal alchemist can compare to. Fengjiu shook her head. No, this place is too strange. The old man was stunned. Strange? How could it be? This place isn't a place filled with demons. The two people from before said that if the people who came here didn't drink the forgotten dust water, they would be used as fertilizer. When I came here, the two people said that they would send me to serve your Dan Wang. I roughly calculated that your Dan Wang is at least 1,000 years old, yet you're still thinking about a flower like me. Pooh. Cough, cough. The old man had just drunk a mouthful of wine when he heard her words. He fiercely coughed a few times and patted his chest to catch his breath. He stared at her and said, little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Is Dan Wang that kind of person? What else? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. He's definitely not the kind of person you're talking about. Those two must have misunderstood Dan Wang's intentions. Dan Wang is only focused on alchemy. How could he be interested in women? That's ridiculous. His face was dark, and he seemed to be a little angry. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. You're not Dan Wang. How do you know that Dan Wang doesn't think that way? How could I not know? Ever since Dan Wang started living in seclusion here, I've always been by his side. He's never had any children, and he's never been close to women. How could he possibly think of a little girl like you? He snorted softly and said, Dan Wang has gone into seclusion right now. When he comes out, I can take you to see him and ask him clearly. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He didn't say anything else and just drank his wine. Little girl, how is it? How about taking me as your master? In this Pill King Valley, other than the Pill Kings, I am the most proficient alchemist. If you acknowledge me as your master, I can teach you how to refine pills. What kind of life essence pill you want? Pills that can increase your strength will be a piece of cake for me. Chapter 3182. Fengjiu stared at him, thought for a moment, and asked, don't you need to drink the oblivion water? No need. The old man waved the drumstick in his hand, and oil splashed out. But I can't stay here for too long. I have to leave, Fengjiu said. It's okay. As long as you get the hang of it, you can leave if you want, the old man said with a smile. Fengjiu said, can you protect me in here? I can. If you become my disciple, everyone here will have to treat you with respect, the old man said. Hearing this, Fengjiu said, I still have a few subordinates not far from here. I have to bring them over first. No problem, the old man said, looking at Fengjiu. So you're ready to become my disciple? You haven't told me your identity yet, right? Fengjiu looked at him and said. Ha! He stroked his beard and looked at him with a smile. I'm Dan Wang. He seemed a little embarrassed. Don't worry, I'm not the perverted person you're talking about. It's just that some time ago, I felt that I had no one to pass on my skills to, and I didn't have anyone to serve me. I didn't expect my subordinates to misunderstand me. He glanced at Fengjiu and said, where are your subordinates? I'll ask you to bring them here. I'll go myself. Otherwise, they won't come, Fingzhou said, patting his red clothes and brushing away the grass on his robes as he looked at the old man. All right. Since I have nothing else to do, I'll go with you. He put down his things and stood up. He took out a cloth to wipe his hands and said, let's go, let's go. Thus, Fingzhou brought the old man to where Du Fan and the others were. She had thought about it. This old man's strength was unfathomable, and his attainments in alchemy were also extraordinary. Now that she had stepped into this place, it was impossible for her to leave easily. Since that was the case, she might as well take him as her master. Learning alchemy from him would also allow Du Fan and the others to recuperate here. Moreover, she had to admit that the dust for getting water, immortal intoxication, and level 7 and above medicinal pills made her have the urge to learn. It was rare for her to meet someone whose strength, cultivation, and talent in alchemy were above hers. If she were to leave now, it would seem that she was missing an opportunity. Du Fan and the others rested in the forest while Tun Yun stood guard in the surroundings. It had shrunk its body and looked very inconspicuous. However, because of its presence, the surrounding beasts quickly left when they sensed its presence. They did not dare to approach. Master has been gone for quite some time, why hasn't he returned yet? Could he have met with some danger? Luo Yu asked worriedly. With Master's strength, even if he met with danger, he should be able to resolve it. There's no need to worry, Du Fan said as he looked ahead, waiting for her to return. The first to notice Fingzhou's return was Tun Yun. It was patrolling the surroundings. When it saw that its master had returned with an old man behind her, it immediately became alert. Master! When they saw her, they all stood up and greeted her. They were a little surprised to see a dirty old man behind her. Dan Wang, who was following behind Fingzhou, glanced at them before shifting his gaze to Fingzhou. Chapter 3183. Thus, she led them to the valley of the Pill King. The Pill King followed at her side and said to Fengzhou, I say, disciple, your people are too weak. Why don't you hand them over to me and let me help you train them? No need. Fengzhou directly refused. Hee, you really don't give me any face. Dan Wang didn't get angry. He just smiled and looked at her. However, you're all injured like this. Could it be that you've provoked some enemy? From the looks of it, the other party almost killed you. Dan Wang Valley has been secluded from the world for many years. Even if I told you, you probably wouldn't know. As Fingzhou spoke, he flew them to Dan Wang Valley. Along the way, when Dan Wang opened the barrier, he followed him in and arranged for Du Fan and the others to rest in the cave. After they were settled, Dan Wang looked at Fingzhou with his hands behind his back and said, All right, you've brought your people. In a moment, I'll have my subordinates make arrangements for the apprenticeship ceremony tomorrow. After tomorrow, this old man will be your master. I can be your apprentice, but I won't kneel. Fengzhou looked at him and said. Hearing this, Dan Wang's hand that was stroking his beard paused. He stared at her for a while and nodded. All right, then you should rest well. Rest well. Tomorrow, someone will come to lead you to the front. After saying this, he didn't stay for long and turned to leave. After he left, Fengzhou walked to the cave where Du Fan and the others were resting. As soon as they entered, they asked, Master, who is that Dan Wang? Is it really okay for us to stay here? Master, are you really going to take him as your master? After a series of questions, Fengzhou raised his hand and said, This Dan Wang Valley is isolated from the rest of the world, and the surrounding 10,000 miles are all dangerous places. It will be difficult for us to leave in a short time. In addition, all of you are seriously injured, so we can only stay here and recuperate. Moreover, the people in this place are not weak. The 3 people I've met so far are all stronger than me. Although it's very likely that it's because of the advancement pills, we have to stay here regardless of whether we're willing or not. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Since their master had said so, they definitely couldn't leave even if they wanted to. Since that was the case, they could only take one step at a time. At least for now, it seemed that Dan Wang wouldn't do anything to them. Recuperate first. My immortal's cave is less than 100 meters away from you. If you need anything, you can look for me. Feng Jiu told them to have a good rest first. Yes. They responded. They knew that they had to recuperate first before anything else. After returning to the immortal's cave to rest, Feng Jiu felt that today seemed a little messy. With Dan Wang's experience, she didn't believe that he couldn't see through her intentions, but he still said that he wanted to take her as his disciple. Perhaps it was true that he wanted to take her as his disciple, but she felt that letting her go after she learned something was definitely a lie. She reckoned that even if she really learned his skills, he definitely wouldn't be willing to let her leave this Dan Wang Valley and return to the secular world. However, she didn't say anything at the moment, so she could only take one step at a time. This contest had just begun, so it was a little too early to say these things now. What she didn't know was that on that night, the two middle-aged men who had drunk the drunken immortal had already woken up and appeared at Dan Wang's immortal's cave, and were showered with dog blood. Chapter 3184. The alchemists in Dan Wang's valley couldn't help but look forward to it. Someone asked, "Is he going to pick someone from among us to be Dan Wang's disciple?" If that's the case, then that's great. If they can be Dan Wang's disciple, their alchemy skills will definitely be better. I just don't know who among us Dan Wang will pick to be his disciple, another alchemist said. He wasn't sure either. After all, in their opinion, the alchemists in the valley were all at the same level, so it was really hard to say. Hearing the words of the two alchemists, a cultivator stepped forward and whispered, "He's not going to pick someone from among us." Dan Wang picked a woman, a red-clothed woman who accidentally barged into Dan Wang's valley. She's extremely beautiful. Hearing this, those alchemists were startled. Someone from outside? How is that possible? Our valley is isolated from the rest of the world. Not just anyone can come here, let alone a woman. Could there be a mistake? There's no mistake. I've seen that woman before. She's very young. Dan Wang even went out with her a few days ago. When they came back, there were a few more injured people following them. I heard that Dan Wang wants to accept that woman as his successor. We'll be able to see her later. Hearing that person's words, all the alchemists were shocked and stunned. They thought that Dan Wang would pick one of them as his disciple, but they didn't expect that he would actually pick a woman from outside. How could a mere woman become a good alchemist? How could a woman be compared to them? Dan Wang was really muddle-headed. How could a woman catch Dan Wang's eye? I'd like to see what kind of skills this woman has. An alchemist said, his face darkening. That's right. I also want to see what's so outstanding about this woman that Dan Wang wants to accept as his successor. How could she make Dan Wang abandon us and choose her? That's right. If she doesn't have true ability, this old man won't accept it. If she doesn't have true ability, I won't admit that she's Dan Wang's successor. She's the next successor of Dan Wang's valley. Not bad. Exactly. I must find out what's going on. For a moment, all of them were in high spirits. They seemed to be very angry and very unwilling. If he was the successor of Dan Wang, then he would be the young master of Dan Wang Valley and the next successor of Dan Wang Valley. If such a person didn't have any real ability, how could they easily acknowledge him? When the King of Pills walked out with a woman in red, all of their gazes landed on the woman in red. With just one glance, they all frowned at the same time. He was too young. In front of them, Dan Wang was dressed in a wide white robe. His white hair and beard made him look like an immortal. He looked extraordinary. He walked slowly with his hands clasped behind his back. Out of the corner of his eye, he kept an eye on the red figure following behind him. Seeing her calm demeanor, he couldn't help but nod to himself. She was indeed worthy of being the person he had chosen. Her calm demeanor was extraordinary. At this moment, how could he know that Fengzhou was someone who had experienced countless things? How could a mere person from Danwang Valley shock her? As she walked forward, her gaze swept across the crowd below, sizing them up without batting an eyelid. She followed Dan Wang to the center. Seeing that Dan Wang had stopped, she stopped and stood quietly beside him, facing the crowd. Chapter 3185. As soon as Dan Wang's words came out, the people below began to discuss. Someone walked out and said, "Dan Wang, this woman's background is unknown. Isn't taking her as a disciple too lightly? Our Danwang Valley has been isolated from the world for so many years. If something were to happen because of this, wouldn't it be too late for regrets?" That's right. Moreover, since Dan Wang wants to take in a disciple, wouldn't it be too troublesome to take in someone who doesn't know anything about alchemy and teach her bit by bit? There are many outstanding alchemists in our Danwang Valley. If Dan Wang wants to take in a disciple, why doesn't he choose from among us? Taking in an outsider as a disciple and letting her become our Danwang Valley's young master, how can we accept this? If Dan Wang insists on taking her as a disciple, then let her show us her skills. As long as she can convince us, we'll acknowledge her as our young master. Otherwise, even if Dan Wang takes her as a disciple, we won't accept her, let alone acknowledge her. Hearing those alchemists' unconvinced voices, Dan Wang's eyes flashed. He didn't look surprised and instead felt that it was a matter of course. He stroked his beard and smiled, then looked at Fengzhou. "Xiao Zhou, what do you think we should do about this? They won't accept you." Fengzhou glanced at Dan Wang and felt quite surprised. Becoming Dan Wang's disciple would make her the young master of Danwang Valley. So, this Dan Wang really wanted to take her as a disciple? Becoming your disciple would make her the young master of this place. Her eyes flashed and she asked Dan Wang in a low voice. The smile on Dan King's face deepened as he nodded. "That's right, becoming my disciple means becoming my successor. Naturally, you're also the young master of this place, you can be considered half a master of Dan King Valley." Hearing this, Fengzhou smiled. This benefit is not bad. Immediately, she stepped forward and looked at the dozen or so alchemists in front of her and said, "I wonder what I have to do to make you submit to me." Actually, compared to this, she was more willing to use her fists to settle things. It was simple, crude and direct, and if they didn't submit, she would beat them until they submitted. But when dealing with these pill masters, it seemed that she couldn't use this kind of crude method. Since you want to become Dan Wang's disciple, you naturally have to have some talent in the field of medicinal pills. Recognizing medicinal herbs, concocting medicinal pills, and concocting medicinal pills are all indispensable. The old man who spoke stared at the red-clothed Fengzhou and said, "Miss, do you dare to give it a try?" Fengzhou pursed her lips and smiled. Her eyes were full of smiles. "Of course, it's just that." She paused and glanced at them. "But what?" those alchemists asked. "It's just that you're going against your superiors by testing me like this. After all, I'm Dan Wang's acknowledged disciple, the young master of Danwang Valley, and half your master." Hearing this, those pill masters' eyes flashed and they asked, "Then what do you mean?" Fengzhou walked slowly and looked at them with a smile in her clear eyes. "I heard that all of you are pill masters who can refine 7th level medicinal pills. Unfortunately, a few of my subordinates have suffered serious injuries and need a few pills. As long as all of you agree, after the 3 rounds of assessment, if I pass your assessment, then each of you will have to offer me a 7th level core and a 7th level vitality recovery pill." Hearing this, someone sneered, "Your appetite is not small." Chapter 3186. Hearing this, the pill master glared at her and asked, "What if you can't pass?" If I can't pass everyone's assessment, I'll naturally leave this place," she said with a smile. Then, she turned to look at the King of Elixirs and said, "Furthermore, I will persuade the King of Elixirs to choose a successor from among you." "All right." As soon as she spoke, all the pill masters immediately agreed. Their fighting spirit was aroused and they were determined to use everything they had to prevent her from passing the 3 stages of the assessment. When the others heard their conversation, their eyes flickered. Since the woman in red had spoken such words, they were afraid that the 3 stages of the assessment would not be so easy to pass. With the abilities of the pill masters, it should be easy for them to prevent her from passing the 3 stages. She had dug a hole for herself and jumped into it. It was such a good opportunity, but she had to turn it into this. If she couldn't pass the 3 stages, even if Dan Wang stepped forward, he would not be able to salvage the situation. Dan Wang watched this scene and did not say anything. He only looked at them as if he was watching a good show. In the end, he asked someone to bring a chair over and sat down to watch the 3 stages of the assessment. He was happy that someone was helping him test Fengzhou's abilities, so he naturally would not stop them. Furthermore, he felt that this little fellow, Fengzhou, would bring him a pleasant surprise. He would just wait and see. Following the pill master's orders, the surrounding crowd dispersed and the wide and long medicine tables were placed together. 19 pill masters stood by the long tables. They looked at each other and each took out some spirit herbs. After filling the tables with these spirit herbs, they nodded in satisfaction and retreated to the side. There are over 1,000 types of spirit herbs here. The first stage is for you to pick out 100 types of spirit herbs from the list that we've given you. You have the time for 1 incense stick to burn. One of the alchemists paused for a moment before turning to Feng Jiu and saying, "If you are unable to pick out 100 herbs from the list within the time limit, you will be deemed to have failed the assessment. If the 100 herbs you pick out are different from those on the list, you will also be deemed to have failed the assessment." Hearing this, Fengzhou glanced at the 1,000 types of spirit herbs on the table and nodded, I understand. Where's the list?" The pill masters looked at each other and handed over the list with the 100 types of spirit herbs to her. At the same time, they lit a stick of incense. Following the incense sticks burning, the assessment began. Fengzhou then walked towards the table. She did not look at the spirit herbs on the table but first looked at the list in her hand and memorized each one of the 100 types of spirit herbs. However, this action of hers caused the alchemists to sneer at her. Does she think she has a photographic memory? She actually wants to memorize the 100 types of spirit herbs on the list. The incense stick is burning but she's still so calm. What a weirdo. She must feel that she has no way of informing them, so she's putting on an act. Why would Dan Wang choose such a person as his successor? This kind of woman, even if she were to become my disciple, I would still dislike her. Words of disdain came out from the mouths of the pill masters. It seemed that none of them were optimistic about Fengzhou and felt that she was just a person with a false appearance. Chapter 3187. Fengzhou stood in front of the medicine table and glanced at the spiritual herbs. Then, he began to pick out one spiritual herb after another. The speed at which she chose the spirit herbs was extremely fast. She didn't even need to think before she directly reached out to pick them up and placed them on an empty table beside her. The 19 alchemists felt a sense of familiarity when they saw her holding the elixirs. Their eyelids couldn't help but twitch as they felt a sense of uneasiness in their hearts. Looking at this little girl's actions, why did it seem like she was very familiar with spirit herbs? Could it be that they had dug a hole and jumped into it themselves? Seeing the little girl pick out those spiritual herbs without even looking at the list of herbs, they couldn't help but be on guard. Looking at the incense stick, they saw that it had burned halfway and there were at least 60 to 70 stalks of spiritual herbs on the table beside the little girl. They couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Could it be that he had passed this round? Among the 100 types of spiritual herbs, were there any that weren't taken wrongly? Because of their nervousness, they kept staring until they saw that there was still 1/3 of the incense stick left, and the red-clothed woman on the medicine table had already stopped. "All right," Fengjiu said as he looked at them. The 19 alchemists widened their eyes. They stared at her for a long while before walking up to her with the list of the 100 herbs written on it and comparing them one by one. "There's nothing wrong with the snake crouching seed, there's nothing wrong with the 9 strands root, there's nothing wrong with the crouching dragon, and there's nothing wrong with the 7-leaf purple core grass." That they blindly matched the ingredients, and saw that every single spirit herb was correct. Among them, they deliberately picked a few stalks of spirit herbs that were hard to distinguish whether it was their shape or smell, and mixed them in. Unexpectedly, she didn't make any mistakes either. The 19 alchemists holding the list looked at each other. They blinked their eyes and took a deep breath, suppressing the strange feeling in their hearts. Looking at the Fengjiu, they picked up a spirit herb and asked, "Let me ask you, what kind of spirit herb is this? What is its medicinal effect?" Fengjiu glanced at it and said with a smile, "This is the 7-inch heart-clearing grass. It has the effect of calming one's mind, calming one's qi, clearing one's heart, and resolving worries." "What about this one? Why did you take this one instead of this one?" The alchemist took out another spirit herb that looked similar to the 7-inch clear heart grass and placed it on the table. Fengjiu pursed his lips and smiled. "The name on the list is 7-inch clear heart grass, but this one is inch green. Although they look the same, their medicinal effects are different. Moreover, when the 7-inch clear heart grass blossoms, its color is purple, but this inch green flower is light purple, and the roots under the leaves are also light purple. I naturally wouldn't mix them up." Hearing this, the alchemists were speechless for a long time, none of them able to refute. Could it be that this little girl already knew about the difference between these two spiritual herbs? Were they the ones who were fooling around and making a fool of themselves? He. Dan Wang, who was sitting on the side and watching the whole process, chuckled while stroking his beard. His face was smiling like a flower, and his eyes curved into crescents. He looked at the alchemists and said, "Everyone, she passed the first test, right?" Hearing Dan Wang's words, even if the 19 alchemists didn't want to admit it, they had no choice but to admit that Fengjiu had passed the first test. Thus, they nodded and looked at the red-clothed girl with a faint smile on her face, saying, she passed the first test." Chapter 3188. The 19 pill masters glared at her and cursed in their hearts, shameless. She wanted them to be merciful, so that she could hand over their 7th-level medicinal pills. She even wanted them to submit to her and respectfully address her as young master. They wished they could do everything in their power to stop her in this assessment and not give her any chance. "What are you going to test in the second round?" Dan Wang leisurely watched the show and asked. The 19 pill masters were stunned and were stumped for a moment. They were only discussing the first round just now because they felt that Fengjiu wouldn't be able to pass the first round, so they didn't think about how to test her in the second round. Looking at the stunned expressions of the dozen or so pill masters, Dan Wang smiled. "Don't tell me you haven't thought about it yet. Previously, you said that she could recognize herbs, make medicine, and refine pills. Since she's already passed the first round, then the second round is naturally about making medicine. Why don't you give her a prescription and let her make a medicine on the spot?" When Dan Wang said this, the pill masters looked at each other and felt that this method was feasible. So after discussing for a while, they nodded, "All right, then let's make medicine." So, the 19 of them gathered together to discuss what kind of prescription to give to Fengjiu to refine. She was able to distinguish 100 types of spiritual herbs in less than an incense stick's worth of time. I think she should have dabbled in medicinal pills. The prescription we gave must not be too simple. Otherwise, it will be easy for her to pass. And that's reasonable. I feel that we should discuss the difficulty of this list. We can't give her a prescription that's too simple. Another pill master agreed. But we don't know how deep this little girl has dabbled in alchemy. If we give her a prescription that's too simple, she will easily pass. If we give her a prescription that's too difficult, it will seem like we're bullying her. This seems. For a moment, everyone hesitated. After all, they weren't ordinary pill masters. Adding on their age, they didn't want the people in Dan Wang's valley to think that they were bullying a little girl. How about this? Let's first ask her about her involvement in alchemy. If she is also an alchemist, then things will be much easier. An alchemist suggested. Will she be honest? If she doesn't tell the truth, we won't know if what she said is true or false. Let's ask him first and see what he thinks. An old alchemist said as he looked towards Fingzhou, who was standing at the side. He cleared his throat and asked, "Miss, seeing how familiar you are with spiritual herbs, could it be that you are an alchemist?" Hearing this, Fingzhou's eyes flashed and he smiled. "Yes, I am an alchemist." Hearing this, everyone was a little surprised. Was he really an alchemist? Moreover, he told them so straightforwardly. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. For her straightforwardness, and also for her honesty. Dan Wang, who was sitting at the side, didn't seem surprised when he heard Fingzhou's words. He only glanced at Fingzhou, then took a sip of the spirit tea offered by the medicine boy beside him. Alchemist. He had long seen that this little girl was an alchemist. Moreover, she was a master with a belly full of tricks. Chapter 3189. Hearing her say that she was a pill master so straightforwardly and honestly, the 19 pill masters were too embarrassed to ask any more questions. Thus, they continued to discuss. I think that her age is right there, so her years of pill refining should be around that. So even if she is a pill master, I reckon that no matter how talented she is, she should only be at the level of a pill ancestor. And I think so too. In any case, she won't surpass the level of a pill ancestor. So the prescription we give, as long as it's around this level, it should be able to stump her. Since that's the case, how about we use the prescription for the muscle revitalization jasper ointment? That prescription looks simple, but the steps are complicated. Furthermore, we can't be careless in the concoction of the medicine. If we use too much or too little medicine in a single step, the medicine refined won't be able to be used. The difficulty of that prescription is so high that even a pill saint might not be able to concoct it. I think that using that prescription to test her will definitely make her back down. Hearing this, the 19 pill masters looked at each other and nodded, and then we'll use this prescription. Thus, they handed the prescription to Fingzhou and said, from now until noon, before the sun reaches the middle of the mountain, if you can refine the medicine according to this prescription, you'll pass. Of course, you must follow the instructions on this. If the steps of the medicine are wrong, then you'll also fail the test. Fingzhou took the prescription and looked at it, asking, is this prescription really as mentioned in the notes on it? It has the miraculous effect of dissolving decay, relieving pain, and healing muscles. Of course. This is a prescription that the 19 of us have researched for many years. One of the pill masters said, as if he was very dissatisfied with being questioned. Hearing this, Fingzhou nodded and smiled, then I'll give it a try. Thus, she looked at the time and said, since noon is the time, then I'll start. Everyone, please take a rest at the side. She called over 2 medicine boys and cleared out a place for her. Then, she picked out the spiritual herbs on the list from the 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Once all the spiritual herbs were gathered, she began to concoct the medicine according to the steps on the prescription. The prescription was a medicinal plaster, and it had to be decocted, so it would take a lot of time. Although she had refined some similar plasters in the past, they were different from this prescription. Therefore, with this prescription, it could be said that she was experimenting with a new kind of medicine. Because it was her first time refining and she was following the steps of this prescription, after a few incense sticks worth of time, she added a problem with the amount of medicine that she added during the brewing process, causing the ointment to sizzle and emit a trace of sparks. Following that, a burnt smell spread out. Seeing this scene and smelling the burnt smell, the 19 alchemists couldn't help but laugh. I said I knew she wouldn't be able to concoct the muscle revitalization jasper ointment. Is that ointment something that just anyone can make? I've already told her before that as long as there's a slight imbalance in the amount of medicine added, the whole pot of medicine will be ruined. She should have been more careful, but now she's hit a wall, right? An alchemist by the side laughed and said, "You can't blame her. Who hasn't been young and frivolous before? It's already pretty good that she made us take out the prescription of the jasper cream to test her." Chapter 3190. Hearing their words, Dan Wang stroked his beard and smiled. It's too early to say that. Who can say for sure whether she can pass the test until the last moment? Hearing that, the 19 alchemists looked at him. Dan Wang seems to have high hopes for her. But, Dan Wang, have you forgotten that she is just a woman, and she is still young? Does Dan Wang really think she can make the formula that was developed by 19 of us? It's useless to say more. Let's wait and see. Dan Wang smiled and didn't argue with them. Fengzhou, who was making the ointment, didn't take their words to heart. She was concentrating on the formula and the ointment. She failed for the first time, but she still had time. She could take her time to study it. She was sure she could make the ointment. The people around her were watching. Because it was an open process, her every move was seen by everyone. Therefore, her careful addition of the medicine naturally fell into everyone's eyes as well. They couldn't help but think, maybe she really can't make the ointment. After all, this was a prescription that 19 pill masters had researched and refined for many years. She was such a young woman who had never come into contact with this prescription before, so how could she possibly refine this ointment in such a short period of time? However, when everyone thought it was impossible, Fengzhou was still concentrating on making the ointment. Those alchemists also sat down on the field with their legs crossed. Some started to cultivate, some were dozing off. Even Dan Wang couldn't help falling asleep while waiting. The 19 alchemists were also yawning with their eyes half closed. Their eyelids were drooping, as if they had fallen asleep. As time went by, a strong medicinal fragrance spread out. Those people who were dozing off couldn't help but feel shocked when they smelled the medicinal fragrance. They suddenly woke up. What a strong medicinal fragrance! This medicinal fragrance is so familiar. Is this the smell of the muscle revitalization jasper ointment? No, it smells even better than that. The medicinal fragrance is even stronger. The alchemists rubbed their eyes and looked at Fengzhou in front of them. They saw that she was brewing the ointment, and the ointment was gradually taking shape. It emitted a rich medicinal fragrance and a jade-like sparkling green color. She has successfully brewed the jasper ointment? That's not right. Why is the color of her ointment even better than the ointment we made? The aura of spiritual energy hovering above the medicine is also extremely dense and pure. This can't be. She upgraded the flesh regeneration jasper ointment? Is this an upgraded version? Another alchemist took over the other's words and stared at the ointment Fengzhou was brewing in disbelief. Is that possible? How is it possible to change the prescription if it's just following the prescription? Was there a mistake somewhere? Or did she make a mistake? Someone said in disbelief. He didn't believe that Fengzhou could brew the ointment and even upgrade the grade of the ointment. Dan Wang narrowed his eyes and smiled. Not bad. She's really worthy of being my disciple. Chapter 3191. Dan Wang nodded. Yes, judging from the medicinal fragrance and color, she has indeed improved the flesh jasper ointment by a level. It seems that your 2 tests are not difficult for her. The 19 alchemists were speechless for a moment. None of them knew what to say. They just stared at Fingzhou, watching her boil the ointment and put it in front of them. They raised their heads and looked above their heads. It was not time yet, but she had already finished. Take a look. Fingzhou put the ointment on the table and sighed softly. She took out 2 cups of spirit wine from her space and drank it to ease the tension. The 19 alchemists surrounded her. 19 heads poked forward at the same time to study it. One by one, they said something. Not bad. The color is indeed better than the ointment we brewed. The medicinal fragrance is also very pure and strong. The aura of spiritual power in this ointment is also very pure. The color of the ointment is not mixed. It is dark green, almost like jade. It is really of the highest quality. Listening to the alchemists, the surrounding people were very surprised. They looked at each other and wanted to go forward to take a look. However, they could not squeeze forward. Someone asked, "Is this flesh jasper ointment really better than the previous one?" Even Dan Wang said it is good. Can it be wrong? So, she also passed the second test. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes fell on the woman in red. They did not expect her to be so powerful. She actually passed 2 tests in a row. It should be known that the 19 alchemists did not go easy on her in order to prevent her from passing. Even so, she passed easily. It could be seen that she was really capable. Also, if she didn't have the ability, if she didn't have anything special about her, why would the Pill King abandon the 19 alchemists in Pill King's Valley and pick her as his successor? The 19 alchemists looked at the ointment and knew that they could not find any problems with it. They did not give her any pointers on the prescription, but she brewed the ointment based on her own ability. Moreover, the purity of the ointment was better than theirs. How could they not let her pass? What level of alchemist are you? How can you refine such a prescription so easily? An alchemist finally could not help but ask. He wanted to know what level of alchemist she was. Otherwise, they would be too aggrieved. Hearing this, all the alchemists' eyes fell on Fingzhou. They said in unison, "Yes." What level of alchemist are you? You can refine such a prescription so casually. It can be seen that you are not an ordinary alchemist. Dan King's eyes sparkled as he looked at her. Stroking his beard, he chuckled, "That's right, little disciple. Until now, Master still doesn't know what level of alchemist you are. Now that you've passed 2 rounds, shouldn't you also reveal everything to us?" You. Fingzhou smiled and looked at them. He took out a senior alchemist's badge from his space and wore it on his chest. He smiled and said, "I should be a senior alchemist." Looking at the shining badge under the sun, everyone's breathing quickened. Their eyes widened as they stared at the shining badge of alchemy venerable. They couldn't help but curse out loud. Chapter 3192. That's right. Too shameless. She's actually an alchemy venerable, and you're actually acting like you don't know anything. Too shameless. This old man has lived for so many years, and I've never met someone as shameless as you. This is simply deceiving us. She's an alchemy venerable, but we still want to test her knowledge of spiritual herbs and how to make medicine. This is simply like asking a child's question to an adult. Too shameless. Taking advantage of us. Looking at the alchemy master's faces flushed red with anger, Fengzhou was stunned and said very innocently, "It's not that I want to hide it from you, but that you never asked me." Hearing these words, the 19 alchemists held their breaths. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They only felt that their stomachs were filled with anger and had nowhere to vent it. Wasn't that right? They asked her earlier if she was an alchemy master, and she said yes. She told them honestly, but they didn't ask what level she was at. They just thought that with her age, even if she was an alchemy master, her level wouldn't be high. Who knew that she was already an alchemy venerable? After seeing Fengzhou's badge, Dan Wang's eyes lit up. He, not bad, not bad. You're already an alchemy venerable at such a young age. It's really not bad. Those alchemy masters looked at Fengzhou's innocent face, then looked at her badge, and gritted their teeth. You're already an alchemy venerable, and you can refine 7th level medicinal pills yourself. Why do you still covet our 7th level medicinal pills? This person was too shameless. She herself was an alchemy venerable level alchemist. That 7th tier medicinal pill should have already been refined by her, yet she actually had ideas about their medicinal pills. It was really too outrageous. Fengzhou smiled and said, although I can refine 7th level medicinal pills, not all medicinal pills can be refined successfully. Besides, 7th level medicinal pills are so hard to find. Even if I wanted to refine them, I might not be able to do it casually. She paused for a moment before continuing with a smile. Moreover, as I said earlier, it just so happens that a few of my subordinates are injured. If they pass, I can use your pills to treat their injuries. That's not a bad thing. Cunning as a fox. He actually dared to scheme against us and want our medicinal pills. This is too outrageous. Fengzhou's lips curled into a smile as he looked at them and said, now that we've passed the 2nd test, do you think it's necessary to test us again for the 3rd test? Hearing this, the 19 alchemists couldn't help but widen their eyes. They were already alchemy venerables. What the hell were they still taking the test for? She could even refine a 7th tier medicinal pill, so what else could they use to test her? Seeing that none of them spoke, Fengzhou's smile deepened. So, you all acknowledge my strength. Was it possible to deny it? Being alchemy venerable level at a young age, who among them could compare to this talent? One had to know that they had cultivated wholeheartedly for many years to reach this year's level of strength. Compared to this little girl, they couldn't compare at all. Seeing that none of them had anything to say, Fengzhou smiled as he turned around and walked in front of Dan Wang. He picked up the tea that was placed on the side and bowed with both hands as he offered it. Disciple Fengzhou invites master to drink tea. Dan Wang narrowed his eyes, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He nodded and was about to reach out to serve the tea when he heard a voice. Chapter 3193. The old man stared at Fengzhou and asked, since you've become his disciple, why don't you kneel and kowtow? Fengzhou glanced at the old man and said, before I started cultivating, my meridians were sealed and I couldn't cultivate. It was my master who opened my meridians and helped me walk the path of cultivation. Her voice paused and her expression carried a trace of sadness. My master is no longer in this world. He has a special meaning to me. Apart from him, I won't kneel and kowtow to anyone else. I've already made this clear to my master before I agreed to become his disciple. Hearing this, the old man's mouth opened slightly. He was somewhat stunned. He didn't expect this to be the reason. After a moment of silence, he nodded and retreated to the side without saying another word. Dan Wang's eyes flashed and he nodded with a smile. That's right. Fengzhou already told me that she won't kneel and kowtow, and I also agreed. As long as she has me as her master in her heart, it's enough. Whether she kneels or not isn't important. As he spoke, he glanced at Fengzhou and took a sip of the tea. He then placed the teacup to the side and said, from today onwards, you are my disciple and also the young master of Dan Wang Valley. Master doesn't have much to give you. And I'll give you some things related to alchemy. He took out a medical book and a bottle of pills, saying, take these as a gift for becoming my disciple. Many thanks, master. Fengzhou received them and thanked him before putting them away. Seeing this, the alchemists glanced at each other before taking out pills from their sleeves one by one. Taking out 2 7th-order pills, they presented them to Yang Kai. Every alchemist took out 2 pills and the bottles were placed neatly on the table. After the 19 alchemists were lined up neatly, they bowed to Dan Wang and congratulated him. Congratulations, Dan Wang. Congratulations, Dan Wang. After he finished speaking, he bowed to Fengzhou. Greetings, young Valley Master. We have offended you before, please forgive us. Dan Wang looked at Fengzhou with a smile and gestured for her to speak. When Fengzhou saw this, he said, "It's only natural for you all to test me. I won't take it to heart. Young Valley Master is magnanimous." As the crowd spoke, they finally smiled and said, "Young Valley Master, these are our pills. Each of them is at the 7th level. Please check them." Fengzhou glanced at the pills and said with a smile, "I trust you." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her sleeve and put all the pills into her space. She didn't check them. Her actions won the trust and respect of the crowd. It made sense. A person at such a young age who was so outstanding in both ability and talent in alchemy was their young Valley Master. What else could they be dissatisfied with? Although she was a woman, she also showed them that she wasn't inferior to them as a woman. Naturally, they wouldn't act one way behind her back. Congratulations, Dan Wang. Congratulations, Dan Wang. Greetings, young master. The crowd's voices rang out again. This time, it was the entire Dan Wang Valley shouting. Their voices were loud and echoed in the valley for a long time. In the afternoon, Fengzhou came to the cave abode where Du Fan and the others were. As soon as he entered, they surrounded him. Chapter 3194. Fengzhou smiled and said, "Don't worry, they didn't make things difficult for me. Furthermore, from today onwards, I am also half a master of this Dan Wang Valley." Hearing this, they couldn't help but look at each other. Fan Lin asked, "Mistress, will they let us leave when the time comes?" "Right now, these aren't problems at all. Don't think too much about it. Come, I've brought some medicinal pills for you. Take them and adjust your breathing. These medicinal pills will allow your internal injuries to quickly recover." As she spoke, she took out the medicinal pills she had received earlier from her space. When the bottles were placed in front of them, Fan Lin smelled the medicinal fragrance and couldn't help but open one of the bottles to take a look. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Mistress, this is a 7th level medicinal pill." "That's right, it's a 7th level medicinal pill. This is an inner core. After taking it, your internal injuries will recover in half an hour." She smiled and gestured, "Don't just stand there. Quickly take the medicinal pills and adjust your breathing. Heal your internal injuries first, then we'll talk about other things. Also, here's a bottle of jade flesh ointment. It's extremely effective for external injuries. You guys can try it later." Hearing this, they hurriedly came back to their senses. After responding, they each took one medicinal pill and sat down cross-legged to adjust their breathing. Fengzhou left Tun Yun behind to guard them while she went back first. She hadn't even reached her immortal's cave when someone called out to her on the way. "Young mistress, Dan Wang wants you to go to the back of the mountain." A medicine boy jogged in front of her and said. Hearing this, Fengzhou nodded her head and said, "Understood." After responding, she went to the back of the mountain. When she arrived, she saw a pill cauldron placed there. Dan Wang was sitting cross-legged in front of the pill cauldron. Walking forward, she glanced at the pill cauldron and asked, "Master, why are you looking for me? I have a pill formula here. I plan to let you refine it." As he spoke, Dan Wang handed a piece of paper to her. Fengzhou took a look at it and was slightly startled. "Beast form pill? What kind of pill is this?" How come she hadn't heard of this pill before? Moreover, there were no notes on the formula. She didn't know what this beast form pill was used for. However, beast form. Could it be a pill related to beasts? Was it for beasts to consume? She guessed in her heart and asked, "Master, what is this beast form pill's use? What can it do after refining it?" Dan King had no idea where he got the wine from. He lay down on the ground and started drinking. I told you to practice, so practice. What's the point of asking so much? If you want to know how to refine it, you will know. Hearing this, S is S. She looked around, Our Dan Wang Valley has a lot of spirit herbs. If you need spirit herbs, you can go to the medicine field or the medicine storehouse. You don't need to tell me. He waved his hand and jumped up. I'm going back to rest. I'll give you 3 days. If you can't refine the beast form pill in 3 days, your master will punish you. Feng Jiu was slightly startled. Seeing him wave his hand and leave, she couldn't help but think, punishment. What kind of punishment? Chapter 3195. After he left, Feng Jiu took a look at the spiritual medicine listed on the recipe and walked towards the spiritual medicine mountain. There were all kinds of spiritual medicine planted in this valley, and there was even a spiritual medicine storage. It shouldn't be difficult for her to find these spiritual medicine. However, if she had to find them herself, it would take some time. After all, he only gave her 3 days to concoct this beast form pill. Especially when she heard the words he said before he left and saw the malicious smile and eyes. She faintly felt that if she couldn't concoct this beast form pill in 3 days, she would really be punished. Moreover, this punishment would be beyond her expectations. Thinking of this, she hurriedly gathered her thoughts and hurried to find the spiritual medicine. Dan Wang Valley wasn't small, and it took a lot of effort to find the spiritual medicine all over the mountain. In particular, the medicine boys seemed to have received orders from her master and were not allowed to help her gather the spiritual medicine. They were only allowed to tell her which area had the spiritual medicine she needed. By the time she had gathered all the spiritual medicine herbs listed on the recipe, it was already late at night. When she came out of the spiritual medicine storage, her heart couldn't help but tremble. This was because she saw that there were many boxes in the spiritual medicine storage with the names of precious spiritual medicine that were thousands of years old. It was a pity that they were locked. Otherwise, she would have taken them out to take a look. If it was any other time, 3 days would be more than enough for her to concoct a single pill. However, the steps and time required for this beast form pill were rather long. She could only open the furnace and give it a try. She didn't know what his intentions were, but he placed the furnace at the back of the mountain. It seemed like he wanted her to concoct the pill in the back of the mountain. Thus, after she brought the spiritual medicine over, she tidied up her things and placed the spiritual medicine she needed on the side. Then, she lit up a torch to illuminate the area. After she had prepared everything, she looked at the furnace and her eyes flashed. Was this old man testing her? He actually got this furnace for her to concoct pills. The beast form pill was a 7th level pill. How could such an ordinary pill furnace withstand it? Thus, just as she was about to move the cauldron to the side and take out her own cauldron, a little medicine boy quickly ran out. Young master, you can't move. The little medicine boy looked like he was only 8 or 9 years old. His young and tender face was full of seriousness. The valley master said that young master can only use this pill furnace to refine pills and nothing else. Feng Jiu blinked and looked at the little medicine boy. She asked, "Where did you come from?" Why didn't she notice him earlier? I came from there. The valley lord asked me to assist the young master. The medicine boy turned around and pointed before looking at Feng Jiu. The valley head has instructed me to stop young master if I see him changing the furnace. Stop what? This pill furnace can't be used to refine 7th grade pills. The moment it is refined, the furnace will explode. She said snappily and patted the pill furnace. Do you know that the furnace will explode? Even the furnace and the pills in it are gone. The little medicine boy shook his head and said with a serious face, I don't know, and I've never seen it before. The people in the valley have never exploded their cauldrons when refining pills. Hearing this, Fengjiu only felt a breath stuck in her throat, unable to go up or down. That old man sent a little brat to cause trouble, right? You stay here, she ordered. Just as she was about to leave, she was pulled by the corner of her clothes. Chapter 3196. The corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched. That old man had used this pill furnace to refine level 7 pills. She couldn't help but look suspiciously at the pill furnace again. She carefully looked at it and saw that it was just an ordinary pill furnace. However, that old man wouldn't use this to deceive her, right? Could it be that he had really used this pill furnace to refine level 7 pills? Thinking of this, she decided to give it a try first to see if there was anything special about this pill furnace. She signaled for the little medicine boy to retreat to the side. With a flip of her palm, spiritual energy circulated in her palm and a ball of flame shot up from her palm. As she raised her hand, it flew into the furnace along with a gust of spiritual energy. With a whoosh, the flames ignited and the temperature of the entire pill furnace slowly rose. When the temperature of the pill furnace was about right, she first placed the few spirit herbs that she had already processed into it. The fusion of the flames and spirit energy quickly dissolved the spirit herbs. The little medicine boy stood at the side and watched. Seeing that she didn't need his help, he stepped back a little and didn't dare to disturb her. However, just as he was about to find a place to sit down, he heard a loud rumbling sound. He was so frightened that he jumped up and cried out in alarm. Boom! Ah! The pills in the pill furnace suddenly exploded. They exploded out of the furnace and scattered on the ground. A strong spiritual energy and airflow rushed out of the furnace and the entire pill furnace flew up and rolled more than 10 meters away. The loud rumbling sound was extremely loud in the night. Almost at the same time, more than 10 figures quickly rushed over. What happened? What happened? What's going on? The cultivators in the valley were all experts above the heavenly god realm, but they were all frightened by this loud sound. This was because their valley had always been peaceful, and it had never been like this before. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound rang out, as shocking as heavenly thunder. However, when they arrived, they saw a red-clothed Fengjiu with some medicinal dregs splattered on his body and his face blackened by smoke. More than 10 meters away, a pill furnace with a small flame was still rolling down the slope. Seeing this, one of the cultivators hurriedly rushed forward and caught the pill furnace that was rolling down, placing it in front of Fengjiu. He looked at Fengjiu and smiled. He sighed in relief and said, "We were wondering what happened. So it was young Valley Master refining pills. You really scared us. Is young Valley Master hurt?" Another cultivator asked. He saw that Feng Ix's face was dark and there were flames in her eyes. She looked angry. "I'm fine." After Fengjiu took a deep breath, he looked at them and said, "Master told me to refine a pill in 3 days. I think something similar will happen in the next few days. You don't have to come every time." He, okay. They laughed awkwardly. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, they turned and left. After they left, Fengjiu brushed off the medicinal dregs on his body. His gaze fell on the pill furnace in front of him and he frowned slightly. At this time, the little medicine boy hiding in the back carefully walked forward, as if afraid that Fengjiu would scold him. He quickly said, "Young master, the furnace didn't explode. It's the medicine that exploded." Chapter 3197. That's right. This cauldron didn't explode. She smiled mysteriously as her gaze fell on the cauldron. The medicine had exploded, but the cauldron hadn't. Something wasn't right. Yes. The Valley Master said that the cauldron wouldn't explode and could refine pills. The little medicine boy hurriedly said, as if to prove that what he said was true. His clear eyes were still tightly fixed on the cauldron that hadn't exploded. Seeing this, Fengjiu chuckled softly, I know. She looked around and said, it's late, you should go back and rest. I don't need your help here. But the Valley Master asked me to come and help. As the little medicine boy spoke, he lowered his head slightly and stood still with his little fingers touching each other. He didn't want to leave. Fengjiu smiled and asked, you're so young. What can you help me with here? I can deliver the medicine. Young master, tell me what you want me to do. I will help. He blinked and raised his head with a serious expression, as if he wanted to convince Fengjiu. He puffed out his little chest. Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a moment and said, then how about this? You go back and rest first. Come over early tomorrow morning to help. It was definitely not good to let such a young child stay up late. It was better to send him back first. The little medicine boy wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. He only nodded and promised, I'll come over tomorrow morning. As he spoke, he quickly turned and ran off. Seeing the little medicine boy run off, Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle softly. She couldn't help but think of little Hao at home. That little guy had just learned how to walk. She wondered when he would be able to run as fast as that. And she wondered if he had come out of seclusion. Thinking about it, if she didn't go back, her family would probably be worried. Thinking of this, she remembered that she hadn't told them that she was safe. She wondered if Fan Lin and the others had sent a message back. She had forgotten to ask them. Looking at the night sky, she took out her communication jade tablet. Originally, she wanted to send a message to Zay, but when she remembered that he was in seclusion, she used her communication jade tablet to tell Langhua about the situation here. In the night sky, she continued to refine pills. However, throughout the night, the pills were still blown out, but the cauldron wasn't damaged. She studied it for a long time, but she couldn't figure out what was so special about it. Seeing that the sky gradually brightened and the east was gradually brightened, an idea flashed across her mind. She, who was originally sitting on the ground, but she immediately jumped. I know. Her head's and test SS right. It's the controls SS, T test SS. S is T T T T T T. At that moment, she was prepared to refine it again to verify if her guess was correct. However, at this moment, she saw a small figure carrying a food box carefully walk over. He even used one hand to protect the food box, as if to prevent the contents from spilling out. Fengjiu looked at the sky and was surprised. This little brat actually woke up so early. And what did he bring? Young master, I'm here. As the little medicine boy spoke, he quickened his pace and carefully placed the food box on the table. He said, I've also brought breakfast for young master. Chapter 3198. I brought some salty porridge and steamed buns. The people in the kitchen said they were steamed buns made from spirit pork. I ate them just now and they were delicious. There's also a pie. As he spoke, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, Young master, is this enough? If it's not enough, I'll go back and get more. It's enough. Fengjiu smiled and reached out to pinch his face. As expected, 2 black fingerprints were left on his face. She chuckled and took out her hands to wash them. She asked, Did you come here after eating? Then you must have woken up before the sun rose. The little medicine boy nodded, Yes, I woke up when the rooster crowed. After washing her hands, Fengjiu placed the food on the ground and sat on the grass to eat. She asked, What's your name? My name is Tiandong. I was picked up by the Valley Master. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him, Oh. So you grew up here? Yes, I grew up here. The people in the valley are all very good. The people in the kitchen often give me food to eat. Speaking of this, the little medicine boy smiled happily. Fengjiu nodded and didn't say anything else. She just handed the steamed buns to him. You eat this. I'll be full after eating this porridge and steamed buns. But I just ate. Then you can keep it. You can eat it when you're hungry. Fengjiu quickly finished the porridge and steamed buns in front of her and asked, I don't know what I want you to help me with. How about this? You just have to bring me food 3 times a day. However, if I'm refining pills, you can't disturb me. Hearing this, Tiandong nodded, yes. After eating her fill, Fengjiu tried again. She first tried to control the flame's balance. Logically speaking, she was already very proficient in controlling the flame's balance, so there shouldn't be any accidents. After trying again, she found that the problem wasn't in the flame's balance, but in the spiritual medicine she threw in. This was troublesome. Or was it because of the spirit herbs? How could she prevent the spirit herbs from colliding with each other? The beast form pill was also a 7th level pill, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult to refine. For the past 2 days, she had been trying to figure out how to concoct this beast form pill. However, no matter how she tried to concoct it according to the pill formula or her own method, she was still unable to successfully concoct this beast form pill. Seeing that the 3 days were almost up, she still hadn't made any progress. On the 3rd day, Dan Wang was wearing a gray robe. He stroked his beard as he slowly walked over. He seemed to have expected that Fengjiu would not be able to refine the beast form pill. When he arrived in front of her, he glanced at the pill furnace that didn't have the slightest bit of heat. He then glanced at Fengjiu, who was sitting on the ground, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? You can't make it." Fengjiu stood up and said, "Master, please guide me." She really didn't know which step she had gone wrong. She had concocted level 7 elixirs many times, but she couldn't concoct this level 7 beast form elixir. It's not difficult to guide you, but the punishment. He stroked his beard and glanced at Fengjiu. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and asked, "Master, how do you want to punish me?" As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his palm and a medicinal pill appeared in his hand. Chapter 3199. What kind of pill is this? Fengjiu asked, her gaze falling on the pill. Seeing that it was actually a 7th level pill, the corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. This old man, he even took out a 7th level pill to punish her. Sure enough, Dan Wang was amazing, he didn't even take a 7th level pill seriously. You'll know once you eat it. Dan Wang chuckled and said, "Don't worry, it's not poisonous." Fengjiu rolled her eyes. Of course she knew it wasn't poisonous, but the problem was, she didn't want to be a lab rat. She took a step back and said, "Master, change the punishment method. You said that I'm a pill refiner, I'm already sick of the smell of pills. You still want me to eat pills, isn't this?" Before she could finish her words, the old man in front of her had already appeared in front of her in a flash. He sealed her acupoints at a speed that was too fast for her ears to cover. At the same time, he stuffed the pill into her mouth. He lifted her chin with one hand, and the pill slid down her throat. Seeing Fengjiu staring blankly, Dan Wang smiled and stroked his beard. "Why are you saying so much? I've always been a man of my word. If I say I'll punish you, then I'll punish you. Moreover, it's not a physical punishment, but a pill punishment." Didn't you want to know what kind of pill this is? Don't worry, you'll know in a while. Fengjiu stared at him. She didn't expect him to use force without saying anything. She knew that his strength was unfathomable, but she didn't expect him to be so fast that she didn't even have the chance to react. At this moment, her entire body was tense, unable to move an inch, and she couldn't even speak. She couldn't help but hold her breath, her face flushed red. This old man, he was too sinister. Let me think, where should I send you? He stroked his beard and paced back and forth beside Fengjiu. He stared at her for a while and clapped his hands. I got it. Fengjiu faintly had a bad premonition. She wanted to ask, but she couldn't say anything. Thus, she asked with her spiritual sense, in any case, I call you master. No matter what, you have to be merciful. Don't make me too miserable, right? Hearing this, the old man chuckled. Disciple. Master won't prank you. Master is doing this for your own good. As he spoke, he used his spiritual energy to draw an ancient array on the ground. The array glowed with a rich spiritual energy. After looking at the array, he smiled with satisfaction and pushed Fengjiu to the center of the array. Disciple. Take care of yourself. You must come back alive. As the old man spoke, he left a trace of his spiritual sense on Fengjiu when she wasn't paying attention. Then, he activated the array. With a burst of dazzling light, Fengjiu disappeared into the array. As if space had been twisted, Fengjiu only felt a splitting headache. She lost her balance and was sucked into a bottomless black hole. When her body landed, she realized that she was in a forest. When she felt that she could move, she stood up and stretched her arms and legs. However, at this moment, a light flashed on her body and she transformed into the appearance of a fire phoenix. The red clothes on her body became her feathers. The difference between her and Fire Phoenix was that although she was in the shape of a bird, the feathers on her body were the dazzling red of her clothes. Chapter 3200. He actually gave me a beast form pill. What is this old man trying to do? She only felt a surge of anger rising from her chest. She never thought that she would actually turn into a bird. She wondered how long the effects of this beast form pill would last. Don't tell me they're going to throw me into this unknown place and let me live here in this beast form. Thinking of this, she even had the urge to kill someone. Look! There's a red bird over there. No, no. That's a phoenix. The sudden sound of surprise made Fengjiu come back to her senses. She took a deep breath and coldly glanced in the direction of the sound. However, this look only made her even angrier. She originally thought that it was a human, who knew that it was actually a demon. The trees in front of her were probably over 1,000 years old and had cultivated into demon forms. At this moment, they were excitedly waving their branches and leaves as they stared at her. When she looked around, she saw that the trees that were originally no different from ordinary trees, after the sound came out, a face appeared on each of the trees. Catch it! A bit of phoenix blood essence is enough for us to escape from our tree forms. The tree demons excitedly said and waved their branches, wanting to catch Fengjiu. No, in the eyes of the tree demons, it was only a small phoenix, a beautiful little phoenix with dazzling red feathers. Seeing the tree demons waving their branches over, Fengjiu narrowed her eyes. She gathered the spiritual energy in her body and flapped her wings to fly up. With a thought, her spiritual energy surged and flames flew out along with her wings, attacking the tree demons. Mere little demons dare to be impudent in front of me. She flew high up in the sky and looked down at the tree demons that were struggling and screaming in the flames. Hissed out in the flames, the tree demons waved their branches. The leaves were burned in the flames and the branches became charred. In the end, they turned into a pile of black charcoal, leaving behind only the wails and screams in the wind. Fengjiu stopped in the sky and looked down at the scene below. In her mind, she wondered how Du Fan and the others' injuries were. After taking that pill, if they were lucky, they might be able to take advantage of that 7th level pill to advance, right? There was also cloud swallowing. Just as she was thinking about swallowing clouds, she suddenly felt a flash of light and turned into the appearance of a cloud-swallowing beast in midair. It was still just that the fur on its body was red. This sudden change caught her off guard and she lost her balance in midair and fell down. She let out a cry of surprise and fell head first. However, Just as she was about to hit the ground, she changed back into her fire phoenix form. With a flap of her wings, she stabilized herself and flew up steadily. She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This beast form pill took the form of the beast she contracted with. She muttered softly. She looked at her current appearance, and with a thought, she transformed back into Lao Bai's appearance. As expected, she changed back again, still maintaining the shape of a fire phoenix. She looked around and her gaze fell on a tall mountain not far away. Thus, she flew over there, intending to go up and see what kind of place this was. After taking the beast form pill, not only could she take the form of her contracted beast, she could also use the contracted beast's battle skills and specialties. After experimenting as she flew, she finally took the form of a fire phoenix and turned into an ordinary little bird. Chapter 3201. However, she was still too naive. As she flew all the way to the mountain peak, the demons in the forest ran amok, and there were even giant bird-type monsters attacking her. When she finally reached the top of the mountain peak, she looked around and could not help but be stunned. As far as the eye could see, there were only forests and mountain peaks. There was no end in sight, as if there was no way out. What the hell is this place? She muttered. At this moment, a dark cloud suddenly shrouded over her head. She looked up and saw a giant eagle swooping down, its two curved claws grabbing at her. Damn it! She cursed under her breath and quickly leaped forward. However, as soon as she flew out in the form of a small bird, she was caught by the eagle's claws. Her entire body was brought up to the top of the forest. After flipping over a few mountain peaks, she was finally thrown into a nest on a cliff. As soon as she was thrown into the nest, a few small eagles pounced on her, their curved beaks pecking at her. She immediately waved her hand and brushed the small eagles away. Seeing the old eagle standing at the side and staring at her, she narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "If you don't let your children go, be careful that I'll roast them all." When the old eagle heard this, it was instantly enraged and stomped down with its claws. Fengjiu was also enraged when he saw this and immediately shot a flame at the old eagle. The old eagle probably did not expect a strange-looking bird to be able to spit fire, and its feathers were burned by the flame before it could react. The eagle screeched and flapped its wings in an attempt to extinguish the flame. At the same time, its claws were once again aimed at Fengjiu. The two birds of different sizes, one big and one small, started fighting at the cliff, scaring the small eagles to the side. After fighting with Fengjiu, the old eagle, who was clearly at a disadvantage, curled up in fear, trying to cover its body that had been burned to the point where only a few feathers were left. It asked in a shrill voice, "You, what kind of bird are you? Why has it never met a bird like this before?" Its combat power was too ferocious. The feathers on its body were almost burnt away by its flames. Fengjiu glanced at the retreating old eagle and then at the small eagles. Perhaps because she saw that the old eagle still had a few small eagles to raise, she was merciful and did not directly kill it. "Who told you that I'm a bird?" Fengjiu glanced at it and said, "Let me ask you, where is this place? How big is this forest?" Hearing this, the old eagle looked at Fengjiu strangely and said, "You don't know? Why are you here if you don't know? Could it be that you came from somewhere else?" "I'm asking you a question," Fengjiu's eyes as she looked at the old eagle. Hearing this, Fengjiu frowned. Why did the old man leave her here? Was he really going to let her stay here for a while? How was she going to go back? Perhaps because Fengjiu did not speak, the old eagle continued, "In this demonic beast forest, other than the demonic beasts and spirit beasts, there are also some cultivators who come here to gain experience. However, I don't know how they come here, nor do I know how they leave." Chapter 3202. Yes, I've seen them before. However, those cultivators are very powerful, so it's best if you don't go near them. The old eagle kindly reminded him, but after some thought, he added, "However, you seem to be more powerful than them. Even if you encounter them, you should be fine. Fengjiu looked at the sky, then at the surroundings, and finally said, since you've captured me, I'll rest here for the night. Hearing this, the old eagle seemed to want to say something, but when he met the other party's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to object. He could only nod and say, all right. However, you can't harm my children. Fengjiu lay down in the nest and said, all right, as long as they don't provoke me. Originally, he hadn't had a good rest during the 3 days of refining pills, and it was the same here. Now that he was at the cliff, he could finally have a good rest. The old eagle's nest was high up on the cliff, and it could be said that resting here with the old eagle's guard was very safe. Thus, Fengjiu relaxed and slept in the nest. The nest was occupied, and the young eagles could only shrink to the side, not daring to disturb the little bird that had taken over their nest. This little bird looked very harmless, and its small body wasn't very big, but its fighting strength was astonishing. After seeing the previous battle, they were already traumatized by this little bird, and didn't dare to eat it. Fengjiu slept soundly. High up in the sky, it was quiet and serene, and a cool breeze gently brushed against her body, making her feel very comfortable. It was also because she slept so soundly that when night fell and the sky turned dark, there was a flash of light from her body, and she silently returned to her original appearance, returning to her human form. This scene shocked the old eagle that was keeping watch, as well as the young eagles that were huddled in a corner of the nest. They thought that they had seen wrongly, and shook their heads to look again. Where the little bird had been sleeping, there was now a human sleeping. And it was a beautiful human wearing a red robe. Heavens! This little bird with astonishing fighting strength actually turned into a human. Was she originally a human? Or had she cultivated into a human form? For a moment, both old eagle and young eagle stared at the red ball, wanting to see what it was. Perhaps it was these pairs of eagle eyes staring at Fengjiu that woke her up from her deep sleep. She opened her eyes and glanced at the eagle, asking, "Why are you staring at me so late at night? How can I sleep with you staring at me like that?" Perhaps because she had slept, her voice carried a trace of laziness. Especially in the night, it sounded even more seductive. Old Eagle pointed at Fengjiu with his wings and stammered, You turned into a human. I've always been a human. Fengjiu raised her hand and yawned as she spoke casually. However, the moment she raised her hand and saw her red clothes and palms, she couldn't help but be stunned. She sat up and lowered her head to look at her body. She had actually returned to her human form. Could it be that the effects of the medicine have worn off? She couldn't help but exclaim in pleasant surprise. She still felt that her human form was more comfortable. Now that she had returned to her human form, she immediately asked, "Old Eagle, is there a water source nearby? I want to take a bath." Taking a bath in the middle of the night. Chapter 3203. Fengjiu stuck her head out of the nest and looked down. Due to the height, she couldn't see anything, so she said to Old Eagle, "Bring me down." Old Eagle was a little unwilling, but it didn't dare to refuse. Instead, it asked, "You're a human cultivator. Don't you know how to fly on a sword? Why do you need me to bring you down? I'm not familiar with the terrain below, and it's already so late at night. I'll go take a bath. I'll be more at ease with you watching over me." With that said, she smiled and shot Old Eagle a glance. "Who told you to bring me back? Tell me, if I don't look for you, who else should I look for?" Old Eagle couldn't help but stifle its anger when it heard this. In the end, it didn't say anything. Instead, it let out a breath of air and flapped its wings to fly down to the nest, allowing Fengjiu to climb onto its back. Fengjiu leaped up and grabbed Old Eagle's feathers with both hands. As she flew down, she felt the speed of her descent quicken. The night wind blew against her face, causing her to feel a stinging pain. After a while, she arrived at the bottom. Sure enough, there was a water source below. It seemed to be the mouth of a spring, sparkling under the moonlight. You want me to stand guard here? Old Eagle asked as it looked around. It's already so late at night. Even if there are demonic beasts here, they'll be demonic wolves. I'm not good at dealing with demonic wolves. Fingyo took off her outer clothes and walked towards the mouth of the spring. Stand guard. I'll be done soon. With that said, she took off her outer clothes and quickly entered the water. The cool spring water seeped into her skin, and the refreshing feeling made her feel much more energetic. She dove into the water, washed her hair, and soaked for a while before hearing Old Eagle's anxious voice. Quickly come up. There are demonic wolves coming. Awoo! Wolf howls reverberated through the forest. It was impossible to tell where they came from, but the ground was shaking slightly. It seemed like the demonic wolves were chasing after something. Moreover, there were quite a few of them. Fengjiu frowned. What she said really happened. Just as she wrung the water out of her hair and was about to get up, she vaguely saw a man with scars all over his body running towards her. When she saw who it was, she immediately slapped the water with her palm. As the water splashed, she turned around and flew out of the water. She took out her clothes from the space and quickly put them on. In the blink of an eye, she had put on her clothes. However, her hair was still wet and was still dripping with water. The injured man who was running over only saw an eagle staring at him from above. Just as he was about to run in another direction, he caught a glimpse of a woman in the water. Before he could take a closer look, he saw a splash of water forming a curtain. A woman jumped out of the water and instantly put on a red robe. The woman was dressed in a dazzling red dress. She had a slim waist, and the moment she landed on the ground, her ink-black hair was tossed aside, and water droplets splashed everywhere. Her enchanting and charming face instantly made him mesmerized. That alluring beauty made him feel as if he was looking at a fairy from the ninth heaven who had accidentally landed in the mortal world. However, in the next moment, he abruptly returned to his senses. It was because her clear eyes were cold and breathtaking, and they carried a noble and inviolable bearing. It caused him to forcefully stop the thoughts in his heart, and he couldn't help but concentrate his mind. Fairy, run! A pack of demonic wolves is coming. After the man returned to his senses, he immediately warned her. However, he still instinctively ran in the direction of the red figure. Chapter 3204. Each of the demon wolves that were chasing after them weighed around 150 kilograms. Their eyes were blood red, and their bodies were huge. Their movements were agile, especially the one in the lead. Every time it ran, the ground would shake. It could be seen that its weight was not light. She watched as one of the wolves roared and pounced toward the man. Her hand swept through her hair that was dripping with water. The water droplets instantly gathered between her fingers, and her aura formed a sharp ice blade that shot toward the wolf. Whoosh! The sharp sound cut through the air and shot towards the demon wolf at an extremely fast speed. The speed was so fast that the demon wolf, which had already pounced forward, could not stop its body from retreating and was pierced by the ice blade. A-oh! The huge body fell from the sky due to that blow. It landed heavily on the ground and let out a miserable howl. The howl became weaker and weaker until finally, the body twitched a few times and stopped moving. This was because one of the ice blades had struck the vital point between the demon wolf's eyebrows. One strike was enough to take its life. When the injured man heard the sound behind him, he couldn't help but turn around to look. What he saw made him stunned. He abruptly turned around to look at the beautiful red-clothed woman standing in front of him in disbelief. She actually killed a demon wolf in one move. His heart was shocked, but he still quickly walked to her side. Miss, no, Fairy. Fingyo looked at the remaining 11 demon wolves and a dark light flashed through her clear eyes. Perhaps it was because she had killed a demon wolf in one move, but the other demon wolves that were originally running towards them all stopped. They didn't attack and instead surrounded them. Human. You've got guts. The leading demon wolf king stared at Fengjiu and angrily bared its sharp fangs. It even stared at Fengjiu with drool dripping from its mouth. It looked as if it wanted to pounce on her and tear her apart. Fengjiu brushed her black hair with both hands, and her spiritual power surged, instantly drying the dripping black hair. Her silky black hair was loose, and she took out a ribbon to tie it up. She looked at the demon wolf king and said, "If you don't want to die in my hands, then leave quickly. Otherwise, I don't mind letting all of you die here." His voice was neither fast nor slow. The confidence and nonchalance in his voice caused the demon wolves to hesitate when they heard it. The demon wolf king stared at the absolute beauty in front of it. It saw that there was no fear between her brows, nor was there any panic. On the contrary, when it met her eyes, it actually felt a sense of fear. The pressure and aura in her eyes were too sharp and powerful, causing it to involuntarily take a step back. Inexplicably, it felt that this human woman was terrifying, especially when she had killed a demon wolf in one move. It could be seen that her strength was not ordinary. The intelligent demon wolf king thought about it again and again. In the end, it gritted its teeth and raised its head to howl. It then said to the man, "I'll let you go this time. If we meet again, we'll definitely tear you apart." With that, the demon wolf king turned around and left with the 10 demon wolves. Just like when they came, the sound of 10,000 horses galloping caused the ground to tremble. Chapter 32:05. However, when he regained his senses and was about to thank the woman for saving his life, he discovered that the red-clothed woman who was originally standing at the side had disappeared. "Fairy! Fairy!" He shouted as he looked around, but he didn't see a single person. It was as if the woman had never appeared, vanishing without a trace. If not for the corpse of the monster wolf lying on the ground in front of him, he really would have thought that it was a hallucination caused by his injuries. Fengjiu, who was sitting on Old Eagle's back, returned to the cliff and lightly jumped back into the nest to lie down comfortably. She lightly exhaled and took out some wine from her space to drink as she said, "Old Eagle, your nest is actually quite warm, and the grass is also quite comfortable. At least in this forest, a nest like yours isn't bad." Fengjiu chuckled as she looked at the stars in the sky. "I can also enjoy the night scenery and admire the moon." Old Eagle's mouth twitched when he heard this. He flapped his wings and squatted to the side, asking, "Why are you leaving after saving that person?" "That's a human, one of your kind. Since I'm already here, I can't leave so quickly. Moreover, the old man who sent me here probably didn't just let me walk around. Think about it, I still need to familiarize myself with this place. Tomorrow, I'll go and practice with the monsters in this forest." She tilted her head back and drank. Seeing Old Eagle staring at her, she asked with a smile, "What? You want to chase me away? Are you afraid that I'll occupy your nest?" Old Eagle moved his mouth and said in a low, muffled voice, "I wouldn't dare." Even if he had an opinion, he didn't dare to say it. This pervert was someone who could kill a monster wolf with a single move. In any case, she was still a human, so she wouldn't occupy his nest forever. However, Old Eagle never imagined that he would bring back such a troublesome thing. If he had known earlier, he would have definitely avoided her from afar. Don't worry, I'll be leaving tomorrow. I'll be borrowing your nest to rest tonight." As she spoke, she drank a few mouthfuls of wine and put it back into her space. She threw a few spirit fruits to the young eagles before closing her eyes to rest. When the eagles saw the spirit fruit, they couldn't help but cry out excitedly. They pounced on the spirit fruit and started pecking at it. Fengjiu slept until the next morning. Although Old Eagle, who was keeping watch at night, didn't keep a close eye on Fengjiu, he still glanced at her from time to time. However, when dawn came and the sun rose, he inadvertently glanced at Fengzhou. Just as he was about to look away, he was dumbfounded and stared at Fengzhou with wide eyes. How did this human become a cloud-swallowing beast? It stared at the red-furred cloud-swallowing beast with its eagle eyes and was speechless for a long time. It couldn't understand how a human could suddenly turn into a bird, then into a human, and then into a cloud-swallowing beast. Those little eagles had also woken up long ago. Seeing that the human had changed again, they could not help but shrink together, not daring to make a sound. Thus, these pairs of eagle eyes stared at the sleeping cloud-swallowing beast until the little beast moved its body, raised its hand, and yawned before opening its eyes. The moment Fengzhou opened her eyes, she saw a furry paw. She was startled and blinked, thinking that she had seen wrong. However, when she closed her eyes again, it was still a furry paw. Chapter 3206. That damned old man. She couldn't help but curse. Seeing her hand turn into a claw and the anger from being woken up, she was about to explode. That old man's beast form pill allowed her to turn into a beast during the day and a human at night. How long would it take for the pill's effects to wear off? Wouldn't she have to switch between beast and beast every day? Thinking of this, she only felt sullen. Her master was stronger than her, and the pills he refined were also better than hers. Throwing her here for a mere beast form pill, she was simply asking for trouble. Seeing the cloud-swallowing beast sitting there angrily cursing, Old Eagle couldn't help but hesitate before asking, "Are you all right?" Actually, what he wanted to ask was, "How did you turn into a beast? And a cloud-swallowing beast?" But seeing her angry face, he didn't dare to ask. Fengzhou took a deep breath and exhaled, calming her anger from waking up early in the morning. Then, she said, "Send me down." "All right." Old Eagle flew out and lowered his wings in front of her. Fengzhou jumped up and laid on Old Eagle's back. After reaching the bottom, she said to Old Eagle, "You can go back. I'll walk on my own." Old Eagle nodded, then flapped its wings and flew up. In the air, it looked down and saw that the cloud-swallowing beast had shrunk into its pet form and was walking in the forest. Although it was small, its red fur was still very dazzling. Retracting his gaze, he thought to himself, "I wonder which unlucky person will meet her." Fengzhou walked in the forest and walked out of the dense forest. She came to a place where the weeds were half a person's height. Because she was too small, she couldn't see the path ahead. Thus, she prepared to turn into a little bird and fly into the air. But at this moment, she heard a voice. "There's actually such a beautiful little beast here." It was a girl's voice, surprised and excited. Fengzhou turned around, but the moment she turned around, a silver net covered her head. Got it, got it," the woman said excitedly. She turned to the middle-aged man beside her and said, "Thank you, father." Just as she was about to step forward, she was pulled back by the middle-aged man. "Father, what's wrong?" the woman asked curiously as she looked at her father who was holding her hand. "This little beast is a cloud-swallowing beast, but I've never seen a cloud-swallowing beast with fiery red fur. It looks a bit strange, so it's better to be careful," the middle-aged man said as he looked at the little beast trapped in the silver net. He then said to the two people beside him, "You two go up and take a look. Be careful, don't get hurt." "Yes." Two men in their 30s stepped forward to collect the net. They thought they would be attacked by the little beast, but they didn't expect that the little beast would just squat on the ground and look at them without moving. Even when they collected the silver net and caught the little beast, it didn't resist or attack. "Patriarch, this little beast looks very tame," the two men said to the middle-aged man. Hearing this, the woman couldn't help but quickly step forward and take the little beast whose fur was being pulled. She said, "Don't pull its fur like that. It's so small, it'll hurt." The two men smiled helplessly and retreated to the side. Chapter 3207. Fengjiu lay in the lady's arms and was hugged tightly by her, pressing against her soft chest, making her speechless. Unexpectedly, a silver net covered her, and she was caught just like that. Seeing that the other party didn't seem to want to kill her, she was too lazy to move and just lay down to rest. The middle-aged man looked at the little beast and said with some surprise, "I didn't expect this little beast to be so docile. Maybe it's because it's a little beast." Otherwise, he really couldn't think of anything that would allow a small beast to be so tame and survive in this demonic beast forest. "Father, let's rest for a while." The lady looked at her father and said. Hearing this, the middle-aged man looked around and nodded, "All right, let's rest for a while. Let's go over there." He pointed to the front and led them there. Fengjiu, who was lying in the lady's arms, lazily looked at them and saw that there were only 4 of them, including the lady. The strongest was the middle-aged man and the other 2 were not too bad. However, it was strange that such a weak person like this lady was brought here. After all, this was the demonic beast forest and it was extremely dangerous. The slightest carelessness could cause one to fall into a hopeless situation and become a meal for the demonic beasts. In such a place, they actually brought a young lady who wasn't very strong and had a hidden illness. They were really tired of living. However, what she didn't expect was that after they sat down to rest for a while, the young lady actually shot a snake that was coiled around a tree and pushed it in front of her. "Come, eat something. You eat this snake meat." The lady moved the decapitated snake in front of her and put the little beast down. "Eat quickly. Although these little demonic beasts are a little weak, they should be nourishing for you." Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Nourishing? Which eye of hers saw that she needed to eat snake meat to nourish herself? Furthermore, this whole snake was placed in front of her. How was she going to eat it? Did they really think she was a beast? "Miss, this little beast seems to be a little picky. It actually doesn't eat snake meat," a man at the side said with a smile. He looked at the little beast with a look of disdain as it turned its eyes away to look at the sky. He actually felt that it was so human-like, very cute, very cute. Not eating snake meat. Why don't we change our seed? The woman saw that the little beast was indeed disgusted, so she looked at the man who spoke. "Big Brother Qing, you keep all the corpses of the demonic beasts we killed along the way. Take some out for the little beast to eat." Hearing this, the man thought for a moment and said, "All right." As he spoke, he took out a dead demon pig from his spatial ring and said, "Let's roast some as well. Replenish your energy." "All right," the woman replied with a smile. She cut off a small piece of the demonic pig's meat and handed it to the little beast. Come, try this. This is not snake meat, this is demonic pig meat. The demonic pig meat is very fresh and delicious. I'm sure you'll like it after you eat a small piece." Fengjiu turned her head away in disdain. There was no way she would like a piece of raw demonic beast meat. In order to prevent the woman from feeding her the raw meat, she directly jumped into the woman's arms and buried her head to rest. Chapter 3208. The father and daughter were chatting while the other 2 were busy picking up sticks to roast the meat. Time passed unknowingly, and it wasn't until Fengjiu, who was resting in the woman's arms, smelled the smell of roasted meat that she leaped out of the woman's arms and squatted by the bonfire while looking at the roasted meat that had been roasted to a golden color. It seems like this little beast likes to eat cooked food." When the man saw the little beast staring at the roasted meat, he couldn't help but smile. This little beast is also strange. The beasts here all eat raw food, why does it like cooked food? Could it be that it was raised by a human? Did it get lost? The other man also said, looking at the squatting little beast. When the woman heard this, she was startled. "Raised by a human? You're saying that this little beast has an owner?" The middle-aged man nodded. "That's possible. This little beast is obviously different from the other beasts here. It doesn't eat raw food and is not afraid of humans. It's normal to say that it was raised by a human. Fengjiu turned to look at them, then stared at the roasted meat. When the woman saw this, she went forward and cut a small piece of roasted meat, wrapped it in a tree leaf and handed it to the little beast. Come, eat. She was about to put it on the ground, who knew that the little beast would grab the piece of meat wrapped in the tree leaf with its 2 paws. Just like that, it squatted and hugged the piece of meat to eat. Looking at this appearance that was very similar to a human, the woman was startled. Maybe it really was raised by a human. Fengjiu ignored them and ate the roasted meat while listening to them talk. Only then did he know that there were not only these few people, but there were also some who got lost and were now looking for those who got lost. The reason they came in was because of a big monster in the monster beast forest. They wanted to take the monster beast horn and exchange it with the alchemist to cure the woman's disease. Listening to their conversation, she leaped into the woman's arms after eating her fill. She felt that this temporary bed was quite comfortable. In the afternoon, the few of them continued to walk forward, and Fengjiu was also brought along by the woman. In any case, she felt that she would have to stay here for a while, so she might as well take a stroll. She wanted to see when the effects of the beast form pill would wear off, and how long would she have to stay here before she could return to Danwang Valley. She had a feeling that if she were to leave this place with the other cultivators, she would never be able to return to Pill King Valley. If she wanted to return, she would have to continue staying here. She believed that after a period of time, the old man would still bring her back. But if she were to leave this place, it would be hard to say. Especially since Du Fan and the others were still there. He wondered how they were doing. Along the way, the demonic beasts that they encountered along the way were all dealt with by the few of them. There were no major problems. After a day, she also saw that the combat strength of these few people was indeed not weak. However, when the sun set and the sky darkened, she suddenly regained her senses. She had to go. Once the sun went down, she would change back into her human form. If they saw her changing from a beast to a human, wouldn't they be scared out of their wits? Thus, while they weren't paying attention, she ran away like a wisp of smoke. With a few leaps, she disappeared into the grass. When the woman was about to give the little beast the roasted meat, she turned around and found that the little beast that was lying on the rock had disappeared. She couldn't help but be shocked. "Father, did you see the little beast?" Chapter 3209. The woman was slightly unhappy. She glanced at the surroundings and said, perhaps it went back to its owner. Not long after Fengjiu left, the sky darkened and she returned to her human form. She looked at her body and then looked back. After thinking for a while, she took a deep breath and rushed into the depths of the forest. She planned to use the demon beasts here to practice and improve her strength. On the other side, Wanyan Qianhua was following behind Junju Shang in the Xiaoyao sect. She looked at the white-robed man in front of her and smiled. Although her injuries had healed during this period of time, and her body and soul had returned to their original positions, and Junju Shang had been trying to drive her away, she didn't want to leave just like that. After so many years, it was rare for her to meet a man who could move her heart. If she didn't take the initiative to chase after him, how could she be Wanyan Qianhua? In front of her, Junju Shang was walking with his hands behind his back. He suddenly stopped and looked back at the woman who had been following him. He frowned and said, "How long do you plan to follow me?" "Xiaoyao Jun, you're too heartless. Tell me, we're already in such a relationship, yet you still want to chase me away. How am I supposed to live after I go back?" Wanyan Qianhua sighed softly and looked at him with a coquettish expression. "This monarch saved you, and you still want to rely on this monarch." He suppressed his anger and stared at Wanyan Qianhua. He felt that this woman was challenging his bottom line again and again. Seeing the anger in the calm eyes of the person in front of her, Wanyan Qianhua covered her mouth and smiled charmingly. "Xiaoyao Jun, you have been alone for so many years. Don't you think it's time to find someone by your side?" Her eyes were full of affection and her lips were smiling. Her beautiful eyes turned to look at him in a flirtatious manner. I, Wanyan Qianhua, have only met a man like Xiaoyao Jun who can move my heart in all these years. Although you are a little old, that doesn't stop me from liking you. I am not interested in you. Jun Shang said coldly. It doesn't matter. As the saying goes, it is easy for a woman to chase a man. I am interested in you, so I will take the initiative. She walked in front of him and hugged his arm. She leaned against him and said, Xiaoyao Jun, don't you think so? Looking at the woman who was leaning on him, Jun Shang waved his hand and tried to push her away. Who would have thought that she would hug him even tighter? Let go. I won't. You. Jun Shang had never been able to deal with a woman in his life. He had sternly spoken to her and even used his aura to intimidate her. However, this woman wasn't afraid of him tonight. She was still tightly clinging to him. He couldn't help but feel a sense of defeat. Xiaoyao Jun, you said that you're an unmarried man, and I'm an unmarried woman. Now that our relationship is like this, and the disciples of the Xiaoyao sect know about us, don't you think you should give me an explanation? Jun Shang glanced at her with a gloomy face. You are you, and I am me. We have nothing to do with each other. Ah. Wanyan Qianhua looked at him in surprise. She covered her mouth and said, we bathed together and you still say that we have nothing to do with each other. So you want to take advantage of me and not admit it. You know who took advantage of who? Jun Shang said with a dark face.